talking about donations compare and analyze reports. Now this is a pretty big topic, so we're going to have to move a little bit quickly through some of the report aspects, but those are covered in detail in other videos and in other training material. And if you do have any questions while we're going through this, we've got a questions panel on the right side, usually the right side of your screen in the toolbar for the GoToWebinar. I'm on my own today, so I'll try to answer the questions as they come in. If not, stick around till the end and I will be sure to get all your questions answered. Keep the questions, please, to the topic of the material today. If you have questions specific about your data, go ahead and give us a call about that and we'd be happy to help you out. So my name is Jennifer, and again today we're going to be talking about the compare and analyze donations reports. So I'm going to open up donations and let's dive right in. So all of our donations reports are up here under the reports and export menu. And again today we're going to be talking about these compare and analyze reports. So we're going to start off with the pledge giving analysis. And this is absolutely one of the most useful and flexible reports in all of the donations module. I use it for tons and tons of different reports. It gives you a lot of flexibility. So on our Giving Pledging tab here, this is a tab that's going to be used with this same information for different types of reports throughout the program. So this is our Giving Pledging tab right here. And all of the different reports are going to have different tabs across the top, but many of them will be the same across all reports. So here in the Giving Pledging tab, you can choose whether you want all people, only those who gave, only those with a specific giving amount. So for example, maybe you only wanted to see people who gave more than $50. You could enter that. And if you want to do a range of gift amounts, you can uncheck the upper limit here. And you could enter, if you wanted to just see people who gave between $50 and $100, you could enter those numbers. And the little X's will clear them out. Then you have essentially the same options for pledging, but you also have the options of the different types of pledges and whether or not the people you're seeing on the report have met their pledges. 9 times out of 10, you're going to use only those who gave because you often don't want to see people included that didn't give. So we'll leave it at that for now. And then you've got your date range over here on the right side of the screen. And this is the other very important part. So a lot of times you can leave everything on this page, this tab, Giving and Pledging, you can leave it as is and just change the date range sometimes. So for now, I'm going to leave the date range as is, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. We have below the date range either show giver totals or summary only, and those are going to display the printout information in slightly different ways. So before we take a look at those two different options here, we're going to move through the rest of the tabs. The next tab is Givers. I'm not going to touch too much on this Givers tab because it is covered in detail for membership reports. So just know that the Givers tab is where you're allowed to enter some membership criteria in donations to limit your search. For example, over here you've got your categories. So you could uncheck if you only want to see members giving or if you only want to see visitors giving. You can do that. You also have an inactive checkbox if you wanted to see people who have been inactivated from the database. And up in the top, you have giver number options. If you wanted to exclude those who do not have a giver number, you would just uncheck this box right here. But we'll leave that checked for now. So the next tab over is accounts. This is where you could choose either a campaign or just one specific account to view, like that. Again, we're going to leave it as all for now. Next, we have the columns tab. Now, this is where we determine exactly what we're going to see on the report. So for the time being, I've got giver, total pledged, total given, and then percent. So that's going to be the percent of the amount given towards the pledge, and then over under, which is going to be how much over their pledge they are or how much under their pledge they are. You've got a bunch of other columns here as well that can be added. The different columns, if you want to know exactly what all of them mean, give us a call and we can talk you through that. You can also always press F1 on your keyboard for the help files. I'll show you real quick. It comes up right exactly to the area of the help where you might have questions. So here you have an area of the help talking about the columns tab. So I'll close that, and now we're back in our report. The next tab over is sort, and this gives us the order that the report is printed in. So you could have it in order by your people. Now, giver, without the number or the name, is going to go by first the number and then the name. So you can also sort by the total given. All these different fields you can sort by. We're going to leave it as giver. Next, we have the fonts tab. I'm not going to go too detailed on here. You can change the different areas of the fonts on the page if you want to make it look different, bigger, what have you. The last tab is additional options. This determines whether or not we put V's for visitors and D's for donors and any other categories you might add. So I am going to add those, and then I'm going to come back to the giving and pledging tab, and we're going to see what the report looks like when we show giver totals. So I'm going to click print, and my preview is right here. So on this preview, we can see that we've got total pledged, total given, and then we've got our percentages and our over-under amount. And you can see some people haven't pledged at all, and others have. Down here we have a small summary of the amount pledged compared to the amount given. And then if we go back to the previous screen and we change it to summary only and click print, we're going to get just a summary of the total pledged and total given, and then the percentages of the comparison of the amount pledged versus the amount given. Okay, so it also, let me pull that back up real quick so you can see at the bottom of the report there is also going to be an option to see exactly how many people are included on the report. Let me try this one more time. Didn't want to come up for me for a sec. There we go. Okay, so on this one, if we scroll to the very, very bottom down here, let me grab my little highlighter. We've got a count, and you can see we've got 50 people, and it tells us exactly what our criteria was. Only those who gave, all regardless of pledging. So I'm going to clear this out now, and we'll go on to the next report. Again, giving pledging is super flexible. We can do a ton more with it. We don't really have time to go too deeply into it, but give us a call if you want help with that or any of these other reports. So next we're going to look at our campaign comparison. This allows us to put a few different campaigns into our list. So I'm going to do the last 3 years, this year and the last 2 years. We're going to skip the Givers tab, we talked about that already, and jump to the Columns tab. Now here on the Columns tab, we don't have quite as many choices automatically, but you have this button down here to add calculated columns. So I'm going to click that. And this is where you can construct very complicated and detailed columns if you want to compare some very specific information on the reports for the campaigns. So you can click the button up here, Sample Columns, which I've done, and that shows you several examples of different types of columns you could add to the report. I've already picked a couple of these, and they're on my list. So I'm going to cancel out of here. And this is going to, these two at the bottom are my calculated columns. You can tell because they have this little dot, dot, dot way over here to edit them. I could edit or I could delete it. And then we've got, similar to the pledge giving analysis, we've got giver or giver number. Giver number will just do the number. Giver name will just do the name. Giver will show you both. So we have the same final tabs here with the fonts, additional options, and sort. This report only lets you sort by giver information. So the campaign comparison, because we're comparing people and what they gave, we can only sort by people. Now, what you're seeing here is it's going to first compare, show you columns for each of the campaigns separated. So you've got the 2016 giving and pledging, the 2017 giving and pledging, and then the 2018. Then you have columns comparing 1 and 2, and then comparing 2 and 3. Now you can see down here, it's cut off my calculated columns and put them on a separate page because it's too wide. But you can see the count of people who pledged to both campaigns 1 and 2 have yeses, and it's blank for those who don't. And then you've got, that column's not really displaying any information, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it off of here because we don't need that one. I'll delete that. And then I'm going to add another calculated column for both 1 and 2, except I'm going to change it on my label and on the bottom here. We'll clear this out and we'll build it ourselves. So we're going to then compare campaign 2, the amount pledged, and we're going to say they pledged to campaigns 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to say campaign, let me see here. I'm going to pull back up my sample. And this is where it gets complicated. We've got ifs, and then we've got the different campaigns themselves. So I'm going to just remove the line for campaign 1, amount pledged is greater than 0. And we'll add that. And then it's going to put it at the bottom, and I'm going to move it up using my arrow here. Now this is pretty complicated, and so if you're struggling to understand what we're doing, don't worry about it. You can give us a call and we can work you through it. This is, again, one of the more complicated parts of the module here that we're working with. So if I add that and then I move it up, we'll have another column just like the other one. Whoops, up one too far, click OK. And then it changes, it needs me to change my name, because we can't save something with the same name, 2 and 3. So we'll click OK. And now if I click Print, I will see another column for the people who pledged to 2 and 3. Let's see, my print preview doesn't want to come up right away. It's coming up on my second screen here. Sorry about that. Give me one sec. Print again, and there we go. Now you can see we have yes and yes for all the people who pledged to both. Okay, so that's a quick run through of our campaign comparison. Next we have the giving comparison, and this allows us to compare different date ranges of giving. So if I want to see the January giving for this year compared to, I click Apply Dates to solidify that, the January giving last year. I can change my years back and click Apply Dates. Again, we've got the same tabs. We're going to skip over them. Look at the columns. We've got the giver, the account name, the amount given, and the difference given. So I'm going to click Print. And we're going to see in January of this year, Miss Lucy Page gave $0, but in January last year, she gave $30, and so on and so forth. So this is pretty simple, this one, and straightforward. You can compare as many date ranges as you want. You can click Clear All. You could do full years. For example, if I wanted to do all of last year compared to, let's say, all of 16. And you know what? I'm doing something silly here. Do you see those year minus and year plus buttons? I could actually save myself some time and just click year minus, and that jumps it all the way back, and then I add it. And if I click Print, then we're going to see the whole year instead of just January. All right, so that is a quick rundown of the giving comparison. We're getting short on time here, so bear with me. This is our step report. You can do either giving or pledging here. And the way this works is you add different steps. And what those steps mean are ranges of the amount given. So in my giving example here, I'm going to see a group of people who pledged between $1 and $20, well, $19.99, and then between $20 and $49.99, and so forth. And so if I click Print, you can see it's giving me different sections with the different people who pledged in each of those amount brackets. I get a count and a total given and a total pledged, along with the list of the people. And I can alter that information using the tabs just like on the other reports. There's not too many columns available for this one because it is a pretty concise report as well. So when you're entering your steps, usually I like to start with at least a penny as my lowest because I don't usually want to include my people who gave or pledged $0. So I'm going to again start with $1, and when I type 1, then I click Tab, and then I can enter my next amount. So after $1, I'm going to say they pledged $50. And that'll be my first range. Then I'll go from 50 to 100. And I'll just keep adding some various steps in here. And then we can take a look. The last one you enter will be the highest amount you typed and beyond, to no upper limit. So we can click Print. And this one is going to show for our pledging. Let's see. Come up. There we go. So again, same as before. Next I'm going to try the summary only version so you can see that. The summary only version is not going to tell us our givers. It's just going to tell us our amounts. And you can do that with the giving or the pledging. The last choice that you have there is to do a page break on steps. So if I uncheck summary only and I page break on my steps, I can then have each step on a separate page. Okay, so that's our step report, and we have hit our 20-minute mark, so I apologize if you have to leave right now, but if you don't, we're going to stick with the last report here, the statistical report, which is also pretty simple. I'm going to show you the vertical layout first because I think that makes more sense when you're looking at it for me anyway. On the Options tab is where you choose that layout. Then on the Filter tab, you can choose a whole bunch of different options. Most of the time you're just going to set a date range. So I'm going to leave that as this year's date range. Then we have columns, and we only have total giving and average giving because we're just looking at statistics here. So I'm going to click Print. And you can see in January of this year, each of those dates, I have the total given and then an average of the giving per giver based on that total and the total number of people who gave. And then down at the bottom again, we've got a count and a total and an average for the whole year. So if I close that print preview, come back to options, we can take a look at our horizontal version. And in this version, we have our days going across as columns instead of as rows, and then our totals as rows instead of as columns. So it's just a flip-flop of the information. The other options with the horizontal layout are to include monthly totals, and that adds a final total column at the very end. And then you can also show the month total first. And then that will put the information at the front instead of at the end. So you've got your total right here instead of on the right side. It puts it on the left side. All right, so we only ran a couple minutes over. So I apologize, and I'm glad we were able to squeeze it all in. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. If you have questions, type them into the questions panel. If you are needing some detailed assistance, give us a call and we'd be glad to help you. Thank you all for attending today's webinar, and I hope it was really helpful for you, even though we had to move kind of fast. All right. It looks like we have a question from Scott. Can you save a report definition? I'm not sure what you mean by definition. There's not saved selections like there are in membership, if that's what you mean. Barb is asking if there's a way to print or export the givers for this year. Absolutely. You can export almost all of the reports to Excel. We'll pull up the pledge giving analysis. Here in that one, you have export data versus export report. The export data will be a raw data file without any formatting. That's best, in my opinion, for Excel or other database versions. And if you wanted just this year, Barb, you would set your date range and only those who gave. And you could change your columns so you only get the givers and none of the superfluous information. Scott, there is no way to save the donations criteria because they're date driven. So if you saved the criteria, the dates would be wrong. So it kind of defeats the point of a saved selection. David's asking about the newer version. What we looked at today is the newer version, 20.16 or 17.2 rather, right here on the main screen. All right, any other questions for me? Thanks again. I'm going to stick around for just a few more minutes in case any final questions come in. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks again. Version 20 is in the process of being sent out right now. We're sending it out in waves so that we don't get the call volume overwhelmed to the point where we can't get back to people in a reasonable amount of time. So if you haven't received version 20 yet, you should be getting it very soon. Back in December, we sent out a survey to see whether people wanted 20 earlier or later. And so first we sent out the version download to people who said earlier. Then we're sending it out to people who didn't respond. And last, we'll send it out to people who said later. So if you haven't received it yet, you can either wait for your turn to come up, or you can give us a call and we would be glad to send it to you right now. It's up to you. So if you're ready for version 20, give us a call or shoot us an email at support@churchwindows.com, and we're happy to send you version 20 now. Otherwise, you can stick with what you've got until you get the email from us. No problem, my pleasure. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the room. Thanks again, everyone. Bye-bye.